Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 19th of March of 2025. Today we have a lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And probably the most important update is that as a result of the negotiation process, as a result of talks between the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, and the President of the Russian Federation, a certain type of ceasefire was established. I'll remind you that before the negotiation process, one of the most important demands from Ukrainian side was to force the Russians to establish three types of ceasefire. The ceasefire on the objects and the facilities of energy infrastructure. The second type of ceasefire was to secure the Black Sea and to allow most likely the Ukrainians to receive cargoes using ships. And the third ceasefire was not to attack deep inside of Ukraine using missiles. From all these types of ceasefire, the Russians accepted just one. The Russians accepted not to attack the energy facilities and energy infrastructure. And according to information we have, Vladimir Putin, the president of the Russian Federation, accepted this ceasefire and he ordered to stop bombing and attacking the energy facilities of Ukraine. And you know that according to Putin and according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, during the negotiation process and during those talks, up to 7 drones were located above the territory of Ukraine, heading towards the energy facilities. But when Putin ordered to stop bombing the energy facilities, the Russians were forced to bring down their own drones with air defense systems. So basically, according to Putin and according to the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation, after they received orders from Putin, they stopped bombing and attacking the energy facilities. And the most important from this is that Putin ordered to follow this ceasefire, to follow this cessation of fire without any confirmation from the Ukrainian side. And the most important thing, that by the end of the 19th of March of 2025, Zelensky still hasn't made even a single statement regarding the situation. Zelensky, according to, let's say, the normal development of the situation, should have accepted this proposal, this, let's say, this step of a very good will from the Russian side by this evening, but he still hasn't done everything. Maybe he is planning to make as the same orders or the orders like the Putin made after the call with Donald Trump, because, you know, right now the president of Ukraine has a call with Trump, and most likely Trump is sharing with details with him, and maybe by the time you're gonna watch this video, we're gonna receive already first statements and first details regarding the talks between Zelensky and Trump himself. But obviously this is going to be a bit later. As for now, the Ukrainians broke in ceasefire because the Russians brought down their drones, but the Ukrainians didn't do the same. According to information we have, the last night the Ukrainians attacked the oil facilities deep inside of the territory of Russia, and in this video we can see the consequences of drone attack that was carried out by the Ukrainians. Later, the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation gave us additional information about this situation. On the night of the 19th of March of 2025, 7 hours after the high-level Russian-American talks were completed and after the President of the Russian Federation accepted the US President's offer to temporarily cease strikes at the Ukrainian power infrastructure, the Kiev regime launched a deliberate attack by 3 fixed-wing drones at power infrastructure facilities in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Kavkazskaya. So once again, the Ukrainians attacked this oil refinery. So we see Ukrainians broken the ceasefire, but later we got additional report from Putin, from the Russians, that due to this situation, due to the fact that Ukrainians broken ceasefire, the Russians will continue following the words they gave to the President of the United States of America. So this is the situation, and I'll remind you once again why Zelensky still hasn't accepted, he still hasn't given any orders regarding the cessation of fire. And the main problem is the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, because now Zelensky understands if he promises Trump not to attack the energy facilities under the territory, that is under complete control of the Russian Federation, then most likely the Russians will start using Zaporizhzhia power plant in full strength, and obviously this will bring significant results, significant benefits to people who are living in this area. From this very moment, the Russians in Crimea, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, DPR, LPR will stop suffering any problems with electricity, because they will start getting very cheap electricity from the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe. Of course, Zelensky wants this power plant back, but most likely he's not going to get anything. The only thing that Zelensky can get is not to become something like a dinner or salad or compote on the Putin's menu, but it's also not 100% sure. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground. Another important thing that also today, as was promised by the president of the Russian Federation, the exchange of the prisoners of war took place. The Russians returned the Ukrainians 175 soldiers. The Ukrainians returned the same amount of number. Another important thing, that another 22 severely wounded armored forces of Ukraine prisoners of war were returned back to Ukrainians because they need of emergency medical care. And the most important thing, that when Putin was talking with Trump, when he was giving his first orders to the Minister of Defense, the quantity of Ukrainian soldiers who needed of emergency medical care were 23. So we see, because of different issues, one soldier haven't managed to survive. Now let's move to the line of combat contact and let's discuss the most important updates. And as for the 19th of March, the most important updates are coming from the Belgorod region, where the Ukrainians made another attempt to break through the border, but the thing is that Ukrainians failed. Ukrainians suffered significant losses and were forced to fall back. Another important thing, that Zelensky decided to launch all this full-scale offensive operation during the 18th and the 19th of March, during the negotiation process, during the talks between Trump and Putin. And as you can see, he was trying to show Putin that Trump can't control him. Maybe he was trying to prepare or to create more or less good environments for these talks and to give Trump at least some Trump cards, but we see that all these attacks failed. The Ukrainians suffered losses. They lost up to 60 of 200 soldiers and a significant number of vehicles. The Russians destroyed almost everything, and during the 19th of March we received a lot of videos of how the Russians were FPV droning and attacking Ukraine vehicles, tanks, infantry fighting vehicles that were involved in another adventure, but this time in the Belgorod direction. So this attack failed, and most likely by the end of the 19th of March, the Ukrainians would return back towards the settlement of Marina. So this is the situation in this area. Few more words regarding the Sudzha direction, where the Russians continue or finalizing or finishing the battle for the region. But this is probably another day almost without any changes on the ground. During the previous 24 hours, we got just one video published by the Ukrainian side that confirms additional progress on the ground by the Russian forces. In this video, we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing the Russian positions to the north of the settlement by the name of Guiva. This part of the forest was immediately geolocated, and this is exactly the place that were bombed by the Ukrainians. And based on this video, we have adjusted just a small piece of contested area in the Russian favor. As for the rest territories, they are still marked as a contested area or the gray zone without any changes. The Russians continue hunting and destroying Ukrainian vehicles that are moving from one settlement to another, from one position to another. The Russians try to destroy as many as possible and to reduce the Ukrainian capabilities before possible offensive operation further in the direction of the settlement by the name of Yunakivka. As for this village itself, we continue receiving videos of complete and full control over the main roads and supply lines in this area with Russian FPV drones, but once again, and probably the most important, without any changes on the ground. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupyansk direction, because telling the truth, we got a lot of very interesting and sometimes even weird updates exactly from this area. First, let's let's talk about the northern Kupyansk, where according to information we have, according to the information that was provided by the pro-Russian resources, the Russians, as a result of offensive operation, managed to improve their positions a bit further in the western direction from the river Oskol, as for now without any proofs or any geolocations. But the most important is the number of FPV drone strikes and videos with the participation of FPV drone equipment that attacked Ukraine vehicles and positions. In this video we can see how the Russians were hunting and attacking and destroying Ukraine positions and the Ukrainian vehicles to the north of the river of Oskol, to the north of the landing area. And we see that there are a lots of episodes, as you can see, and we can understand that the Russians established complete fire control, and the golden rule works in this area as well. The way we see the Russian drones are working the same direction the Russians are planning to move. So summarizing everything, we believe that the Russians are about to begin their breakthrough in the direction of Grigorovka with the purpose to take all these territories under control, to establish complete control over the roads and to answer this defense line that goes further in the direction of Volchansk. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the southern Kupyansk direction. This direction has several names: southern Kupyansk direction, or the Lyman direction, or the Sivers direction, because all these three strategical areas, let's say, focused at the same place, at the same square kilometers. As for the northern parts of this area, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions, and the most interesting thing that the dynamic area is very huge. The Russians are moving, and almost every single day or another day, every second day, we adjust the map in the Russian favor. The Russian offensive operation in this part started somewhere on the 15th of March, and as a result of clashes, the Russians took under control this forest. First, this report was provided by the pro-Russian resources. Later, the same information was confirmed by neutral mappers. Later, the Russians focused on this pocket, and by the end of the 18th of March, this pocket was completely secured, and we have a lot of videos that confirm this. And by the end of 19th of March, we got report that the Russians moved further. As for the 19th of March, this information was provided by the neutral and by pro-Ukrainian sources. So we see that currently the Russians have already established control over 40% of this complex network of the fortifications. And I'll remind you that currently the main task of the Russians is to establish complete control over this territory, over every single trench, over every single stronghold in this area, which will allow the Russians to create a very powerful stronghold before possible offensive operation further in the direction of the river of Oskol, or to outflank the city of Lyman. As for the city of Lyman, we got a few more interesting updates. Today, according to information we have, the Russians improved their positions in the forest. More precisely, the Russians updated their territory control not just today, but today we got geolocation that confirmed this. In this video, we can see how the forces of the 63rd Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine were filming the positions of the Russian forces in this area, and when they discovered the movements of the Russians, they began bombing them. Based on this video, we turned the contested area in the Russian favor. So this is just a report about the changes on the ground. The most interesting update is coming from the settlement by the name of Yampel. You know that the Russians have several group of forces. I believe you're familiar with them. The group of forces north, which operates in the area of Sudzha, the group of forces west, which operates in the Kupyansk direction, the group of forces south, the group of forces center, the group of forces east, and the group of forces Dnieper. So these are the group of forces that are involved in the special military operation. And the thing is that every single group of forces have their, let's call it like in quotes, official Telegram channel. For example, when talking about the official Telegram channel of the group of forces north, I believe you maybe you are subscribed on them, but they provide lots of information. They provided lots of information about the battle around Sudzha, and they were the first who published at least anything. When talking about, for example, the group of forces east, they have own, let's say, Telegram channel, official or very close to, let's say, commanders, and this is the Voin DV channel, and they publish always the most important things, and they are always the first who publish the most important updates from this territory. And you know that the group of forces west have their own a Telegram channel, and the Telegram channel has the title of Оперативный простор. When talking about English, the translation, it sounds like operational space. And they always publish lots of updates regarding the Russian progress in the Kupyansk direction, which kind of attacks the Russians managed to repel, where the Russians managed to improve their positions. And today they published a very interesting article, and telling the truth, I was surprised, because let's call it like the official Telegram channel of the group of forces West stated that today, let's say on the 19th of March of 2025, the Russians began assault operation on the settlement by the name of Yampel. In the Krasnolimansky direction, the Russian armed forces are advancing in the Serebryansky forestry, confidently gaining a foothold on the outskirts of the settlement of Yampel. So when we turn back to map, this is the village we are talking about. So according to the Russians, they are already here. They are already on the outskirts of the settlement. And of course, if we calculate the distance between the settlement of Yampel and possible edge positions of the armed force of the Russian Federation in the southern Kupyansk direction, the distance is pretty huge, up to 10 kilometers in the northeastern and in the eastern directions. And you see that this is a very huge, let's say, gap between the geolocated positions, between positions of different mappers, both pro-Russian, pro-Ukrainian, and let's say neutral sources, and the situation that was provided by the Telegram channel of the group of West that reported that the Russians already entered the village. So when summarizing everything, currently, according to pro-Russian resources, the armed forces of the Russian Federation in this part of the front line, in this part of the Lyman direction or Siversk direction, control something like this. And of course, if this information is correct, if this information is true, then we see that the situation for the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of Siversk is not so good as it was yesterday, as it considered by most of the channels and by most of the resources. Of course, we are not adjusting the map according to the group of forces West, their official statement, because we believe it's better to wait for additional geolocations or at least some confirmations from different sources. But anyway, this is very interesting information, because once again, if this information is correct, then the city of Siversk was already caught by the Russians from the south, from the southeast, from the east, from the northeast, from the north, and from the northwest. And basically, by the end of the 19th of March, the Russians are about to establish complete control over the main supply lines that go in direction of Siversk. So now the Russians are trying to attack Yampel, and if the Russians are able to finish this battle, then we can say that the battle for the city of Lyman is going to start, and this is going to be complete disaster for the Ukrainians in Siversk. Once again, as for now, we're not adjusting the map. We want to get additional updates, but this information is pretty interesting, obviously. Now let's move further, and let's go to the geolocated updates, because I believe this is more interesting. Today we got a lot of updates from the Constantinople direction. As you can see, lots of changes on map, and we see that these changes we start receiving all these changes somewhere on the 17th of March, which means that somewhere on the 17th or on the 16th of March, the Russians began another full-scale offensive operation, and currently the Russians are trying to attack in the northern direction with the purpose to take under control or to reach the outskirts of the trenches of the village of Delivka. So these are approximately the roads of Russian attack. The map that you can see right now is the map by the end of the 18th of March, and this map is the map by the end of the 19th of March. We see more and more changes. For example, when talking about the eastern flank today, the Ukrainian sources published video how they were FPV droning and attacking the Russian demining tank that most likely a minute ago was demining this area and destroying mines for the Russians that began advancing right behind this total tank. So this vehicle vehicle was destroyed exactly in this point, and based on this video we have adjusted the map. Another important video is coming from the northern parts of the city of Toretsk. In this video we can see two Russian soldiers that were moving along the road, and then the Russians entered some trenches. These trenches were immediately geolocated, so this is it. This is attack, and this is forest, and this is exactly the place that was attacked by the Ukrainians with FPV drone. And this is 100% proof that the Russians controlled this territory, at least by the attack when the Ukrainians were FPV droning this area. And based on this video we came to conclusion that most likely everything to the south of this point either was caught in cordon or captured by the Russians. For example, this is the map by the end of the 18th of March, and as you can see, we still had some doubts regarding the Russian control over this central part, over the landfill and over the mine, but now we see once again both either the Russians managed to encircle this territory or the Ukrainians were completely defeated and were forced to fall back. And as of the end of the 19th of March, it doesn't matter, because we see that the Russians are advancing, and once again, as for now, the main target for the Russians is to establish complete control over the village of Delivka, to get another foothold on the outskirts of Constantinople. And when talking about all these things, when combining all these things all together, we see that Constantinople most likely is the next target of the Russians. And now we see, and now once again, if we summarize everything, the Russians are advancing towards the city of Siversk, towards the city of Lyman. The Russians are about to begin their full-scale offensive operation in the area of Constantinople. Once again, Lyman, Slavyansk, Siversk. We see that most likely the Russians are about to start their final battle of this special military operation, because this special military operation, according to official sources, was started exactly based on these reasons. So to restore the constitutional integrity of the DPR, and according to DPR, all these territories is a part of DPR, so are the parts of DPR. So maybe we are going to see a very heavy battle this 2025, which might be the last battles in the special military operation itself. As for the Pokrovsk direction, during the previous 24 hours we have small changes in the area of Shevchenka. The Russian sources published video how they were attacking the Ukrainian positions in the northwestern part. Based on this video we have adjusted the map. As for the South Donetsk direction, during the previous 24 hours we also received lots of updates, and the most important thing that this is exactly, if you remember 5 minutes ago we were talking about Telegram channels about that belong to different groups. So this is it, the Voin DV channel belongs, and he represents things that happen in the area of responsibilities of the group of forces east. So today they published the video how the Russians were bombing the village of Rozliv, and later we start receiving updates that the Russians began assault operation in the area of Rozliv from the east and from the southeast, and also the Russians began advancing along the TO 518 road in the direction of the city of the village of Bogatyr. So this is the one of the roads of attacks. This is the second roads of attack. The Russians are trying to outflank Rozliv and to cut the Ukrainians in Constantinople completely. As for the village of Constantinople, there are still very heavy clashes. The Ukrainians, as a result of counter-attack, indeed managed to restore control over the southeastern, over the southwestern and the western part of this village. Also, the Ukrainians published video how they were FPV droning and attacking the Russians in the northern and the northeastern part of the settlement, which confirms the positions of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. So now we understand more or less how the line of combat contact goes exactly in this area. Another important thing is that the Russians began maintaining their lines between the settlement of Sribny and the settlement of Andreevka. So they're trying to cut the salient to maintain the lines, basically to shorten them, because the distance between, let's say, the settlement of Zaporizhzhia and the settlement of Andreevka is just 7 kilometers. But now, due to the terrain, due to the configuration of surface, and due to different factors, the Russians need to stretch their forces for up to 20 kilometers. so that's why they need three times more forces in this area. They just want to fix this issue, to reorganize their forces, and then to make a final rush towards the border with the Dnipro region. As for the Zaporizhzhia direction, probably for the first time since the beginning of the battle for this territory, we haven't received anything, and most likely the Russians are not planning to advance further. Yes, they captured several villages when they had time while the Ukrainians were regrouping, but we believe that they're not planning to move further. The Russians will dig in deeper, and maybe the Russians will start thinking how to take under control Kamensk. Maybe they will try to outflank Orikhiv, but no plans to attack deep inside of the Zaporizhzhia, because as for now we don't see any opportunities for the Russians to complete this mission successfully. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds you, we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching, subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.